All right, everyone. Quite a weekend in the Sunshine State across the board. Two losses for Miami and Florida State, and the team that won fired its coach. How does that work out? Here we go. Right here at the Voice of College Football, typically at 10 p.m. Eastern Time for the College Football Show, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, post-game, or 10 p.m. Eastern Time, but we moved it up for this guy. I think he's worth it. David Waters, Gators Breakdown, to break down some Florida football with us. David, appreciate you being here, man.
Thanks for having me, Mark. Of course, the moniker is "There's never a dull moment in Gator Nation," but a different level right now.
A different level. So before we get to the coaching change and maybe a quick recap on Billy Napier's tenure and why things didn't work, you've been through this a number of times in terms of the waning days of what we thought would be Billy Napier's maybe tenure last year, and then Jim McElwain and Will Muschamp, and different tenor, obviously, to Urban Meyer because of a lot of drama, and obviously because he accomplished so much, it was different. But for a proud program like this to kind of go through this again, and obviously I skipped Dan Mullen, he accomplished some good stuff as well, but the scene at the stadium, they win a game against Mississippi State. They dodge a bullet at the end. They pick off a pass. They save a win, but everybody's mind's elsewhere about the coaching situation. And it's kind of this hollow win. And even watching on television, it just had this feel of, well, this is probably it.
Yeah, you even got the chance from the fan base, fire Billy during the game. You could hear it on the telecast. Of course, you could hear it at the stadium. And started picking up steam for sure late in that game, especially after a 3rd and 1 where Napier decides to, call a pass play and instead of just running it when Jaden Ball was running pretty well. So that ends up a sack and Florida has to punt. And as you said, it ends up getting an interception anyway. But that was just a perfect encapsulation of a Billy Napier tenure at Florida was that game. As you said, Florida won and decided to move on from Billy Napier anyway. But, the bye week comes into play there, trying to get your ducks in a row for 2 weeks ahead of Georgia. And, if Napier had decided to stay on, maybe they wait until the end of the year. But I think with him, there's some talk of him not wanting to stay on. Okay, that means we got to get an interim in place, and you get the interim in place during a bye week. So that's why the win or loss really didn't matter. Florida was going to make the move because of timing purposes right here this week. But it just wasn't heading in the right direction, Mark. Everybody kind of knew it. Just couldn't get out of his own way. And it's, so much was made of this 2025 season. Some high expectations for the first time under Billy Napier. And, we were 2 games in when you kind of already knew, all right, well, never mind. This thing is not going to be any different than what it has been before.
Yeah, you broke down the timing of the situation. I actually had a guest on a few weeks ago that actually predicted it was going to happen. Oh, it was you that predicted it was going to happen toward that bye week against Mississippi State. So here we are. And before we move on to what everybody wants to hear about, who's going to be the next head coach, just kind of give us your thoughts on. So there are situations in which you can evaluate, okay, big time college football program, this guy was not ready for it versus maybe not the right fit. Maybe he's still really good. He could handle it somewhere else. It just didn't work for whatever reason. Why do you think that Billy Napier eventually did not succeed in Gainesville?
Stubbornness, Mark. That's the number one. I did not want to, sorry, I hope I'm not getting sick because I've just been running like crazy. So my nose is bothering me a little bit. Stubbornness, he didn't want to give up play calling, Mark. I mean, it was even mentioned by athletic director Scott Strickland in the press conference on Monday saying, yeah, look, that is a huge contributor to why he's not here anymore. It's because Billy Napier refused to give up play calling duties as a head coach. Look, I'm all for coaches when you get a new job to be afforded the opportunity to do the way you want it to do. And the way that it got, with what got you here. And that was play calling for Billy Napier. But then when it's obvious it's not going to work or it's a detriment to your team, then don't be so stubborn and make the move at some point. Don't be stubborn. Don't be so, hills in the sand and refuse to do it. He just did not adapt to not wanting to call plays. He wanted to be a head coach that called plays. So It ultimately cost him his job, Mark. And not only, I mean, the offense was up and down. It had its high points and it had its low points. It was never really consistent. That was the biggest mark to it for me. But at the same time, while he was doing those things, there were always questions of game management, and those always kind of reared their head with Billy Napier team at Florida, whether it be time management, game management, timeout usage, penalties, just having a good feel for the game. It was almost non-existent here for Billy Napier at Florida, and it just in today's college football, Mark, head coaches have a lot on their plate. And college football changed when Billy Napier got the Florida job. It timed out with NIL. It timed out with the transfer portal. Head coaches had to become, more than head coaches, or a different style of head coach than what had been there before. And I understand he wanted to call plays, but Mark, if you're going to do it, you better be elite at it. And Billy Napier was never elite at it to begin with. So he's just too slow to change, stubborn to change, and it ultimately cost him his job.
Got David Waters joining us, of course, from Gators Breakdown. It's one of the top college football podcasts, not just of Florida football. And you can catch it right here on YouTube, of course, but also on your favorite audio platform, one of the top and most popular college football podcasts on the audio side as well, on your favorite audio platform. Every time I do some kind of search to look for the next candidate, the next guy, I'm seeing Lane Kiffin more than anyone. He's everywhere. So just your thoughts about the feasibility of that and where that may land.
I think it's feasible, Mark. Maybe more so feasible if Florida had made this move a year ago. I think what does come into question a little bit, won a lot of Ole Miss last year, barely missed the playoff. Is going to win a lot of games this year. So do the wins add up to where, Lane Kiffin thinks, well, okay, I can win here. The landscape of college football has changed a little bit, but I still think there's some, benefits at Florida that you just don't get at Ole Miss with, high school recruiting. I think you can still maybe build it a little more consistently at Florida and not have to live in the transfer portal so much like Ole Miss is going to have to do it. And they did a great job at it. That's what's put them in position to win a lot of games the last couple of years at there. But as we've seen with Florida State, if you live in that world for a lot, it can go the other way as well. But Ole Miss is, proven now 2 years in a row they can hit the portal pretty heavy and have some success. But, it just the Florida job is, I think, a job he's always coveted in the past. He's had some connections to the state of Florida. Monty Kiffin, his dad there at Tampa, and him kind of just being along that. Wife Layla, John Reeves, the connection there. So there's been some connections to the state of Florida. And not long ago, him coming out and saying, hey, yeah, you know what? Steve Spurrier, idol of mine, basically growing up watching Steve Spurrier. So it's just, it makes sense in a lot of ways. It's the type of brash personality Florida likes, the offensive personality Florida likes. It would just be, does Lane Kiffin want the job? In today's new college football world. So it's going to be, his name is going to be there till you hear of a no coming from Lane Kiffin. And, Florida might get one no, might have to go back to the well a couple of times. And how many no's will Florida take before they move on to the next guy? But looking like from the Florida side, Mark, he's going to be priority number one, and he's going to have to tell Florida no.
Folks, we got David Waters in the line from Gators Breakdown. If you've got a candidate on the coaching side for Florida, throw it in the chat. I'll throw it at David. If it's a viable candidate here, I'm going to throw two that will probably take you all of about 8 seconds to answer, but I'm going to throw them out there anyway because they're out there on social media. And of course, it starts with Urban Meyer, and then it's Dan Mullen, because obviously they were coaches at Florida.
I don't think Urban's, I don't think he's going to get an offer. I don't even know if he wants to come back to coaching. Dan Mullen, no. I mean, just went through that. So,
okay.
Yes, the landscape has changed, and maybe he would fit in a little bit more. But you're not. Mark, can we think of a time that's really happened?
Where guys come back?
Yeah.
I did a video actually with Rich Rodriguez coming back to West Virginia for a second time, and Scott Frost back to UCF.
Yeah.
This was the theme of my video. It doesn't work the second time. Every coach, I went through like 13 coaches in recent college football history that went back to the same school. Bill Walsh, all sorts of guys, John Robinson, never succeeded anywhere close to the second time as they did the first time. Just
And
doesn't happen.
the two recent ones you mentioned was they left on their own accord. They weren't
Yes.
fired. I
Yeah,
mean,
very true, very true. They were wanted, they were
yeah.
like doing well, rolling along, and they decided to
I mean, now
go to
Urban,
bigger
of course,
jobs.
Urban wasn't fired. Urban left,
Sure.
and so yeah, I mean that's why yes, there's no bad blood or anything like that. But for Dan Mullen, yeah, you fired him. That's not that doesn't happen.
So John Summerall comes up as well from Tulane, but would there be a portion of the fan base or others that would be a bit reserved in that, okay, we went the group of 5 route before, and even though this guy's really good and they're 2 different coaches, they're 2 different people, it still doesn't have the right look to it.
Yeah, I mean, especially coming from Tulane, it's a bit, hey, another Louisiana school, and we're going that route again. And look, throw Alex Golish into that too at USF. Of course, beat Florida earlier this season. There's going to be the 2 hot, lower tier names. I think that are going to be out there for a lot of these jobs that are going to be out there. So yeah, Summerall, Golish, you'll hear that. Look, I think those guys could be pretty successful coaches. I just don't know if Florida can afford to go that route. Of course, they'll have to. They're not going to go that route by choice. They'll have to miss on a few guys before Florida wants to go and jump into the lower level and bring a guy back up.
So are you pounding your fist for anybody in particular? Like, hey, we need him. This is the guy.
Lane is that guy. I just think
Okay.
the personality fits. Knowing how much the fan base wants as well, there'd be like immediate support. There'd be great reaction to it. NIL reaction, joining the collective action. It would all be there for Lane Kiffin, as the comment says right there. Yeah, it's Kiffin or bust for a lot of Gator Nation out there. So it's certainly that would be the one that just the fan base buys in. Most of the fan base buys into right away. So I saw it in the comments too. Marcus Freeman's name. I think you call if Lane Kiffin says no, you call him to make him tell you no. I think Florida goes big game hunting to begin with, and you go from there. I don't think Florida's going to settle. Florida's not going to go lower level, and then start working down the list a little bit. Eli Drinkowitz, Kenny Dillingham,
Okay. Yeah.
Grant Key. Problem with those 3 guys, they're out their alma maters. Are they going to leave their alma maters? That's except for Drinkowitz, of course. But some of the other ones I mentioned, it might be a hard pull because they're there winning. Throw Brom in there as well at Louisville. I mean, it'd be hard. Might be a hard pull because of where they went to school. So, and now where they coach. So, I think that's the majority of the list that you see out there. It's those names that are going to make up Florida's coaching search.
And in most seasons, David, as you well know, if we went down, I think you just listed 6 coaches that are all really good, respected head coaches. Most seasons we'd say, well, Florida's got to be at or right there in terms of the best job available. But man, we got an off season headed our way that might be completely unprecedented. Florida State, could be Auburn, Wisconsin, on down the line, Oklahoma State, Virginia Tech, Penn State, etc. Maybe some others I'm missing off the top of my head. But man, just all sorts of big jobs open. So there's going to be a rush to get.
Yeah, for sure. Sorry, Bill, I lost you there for a second.
No
Yeah,
worries.
there's going to be a rush. As you mentioned, Auburn, FSU, and Mark, it'd be another interesting angle to this coaching search. Last time Florida had a coaching search, it was Florida and Miami. Now it might be Florida and Florida State. So interesting angle to it there from the Florida side to your in-state rivals. Last 2 coaching searches, you're searching for coaches at the same time. But yeah, Penn State, Auburn, FSU. I mean, if all those come open, there's your competition, driving prices up, maybe taking a guy you want. Interesting angle to it all.
David Waters, Gators Breakdown. David, we appreciate you stopping by. Before you head out the door, any reason to watch this Florida football team the rest of the year? Like players, I guess DJ Lagway would be at the top of the list in terms of seeing him progress and see what his 2026 might look like. But, there's obviously still some talent on this team that needs to be retained.
Yeah, for sure. Going to start there with DJ Lagway, Vernell Brown III, Dallas Wilson. You got some freshmen that you're really excited about at the receiver spot there for Florida. Brown's hurt, so we'll see how long he's out. We'll see if we can get some update on him. If you mentioned, talking about watching the team the rest of this season. Did learn today that Ryan O'Hara is going to be the play caller with Billy Gonzalez being the interim coach for the Gators. We did learn that yesterday, of course, but now we learned today that while Russ Callaway will still be offensive coordinator in title, Ryan O'Hara will be the one calling the plays here for the Gators. We mentioned on the defensive side of the ball, Miles Graham, Aaron Childs, LJ McCray, young guys that you'd like to build around. Coming up, retaining for another year, whoever takes over for Florida. So, I mean, the reason to watch, Mark, is we've seen some coaching changes this year pay off with programs and turn it around a little bit. Florida's still been very competitive in the games this year. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that they could go steal a few wins, ruin a few seasons here in the last month and a half of the season.
Gators Breakdown, everyone. Get there. And it's also on audio, your favorite platform that you can catch David and the rest of the crew right there. Rest, fluids, do all those good things, David, to get yourself back 100%.
And we'll try one more episode tonight, Mark, and hopefully a slower day tomorrow.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for being here, man.
All right. Thanks, Mark.
David Waters, Gators Breakdown. David and I go way back, and he has taken off with that Florida football program. It's great stuff. So check it out again here on YouTube. So he's got an episode tonight, and then your favorite audio platform. And again, thank you for the super chat. Marcus Freeman is certainly a call away for Florida football. We've left the link there in the chat, folks. Please give us a call. Talking college football with all of you. We can continue on the Florida track, of course, but also we've got some other things to deal with. And I thought it was kind of a fun conversation we could throw out there before we preview I lose track of these weeks when it's week 1, week 2, week 3, but then there's a bunch of buys for teams. So you can't look at the records and determine, what week are we in, whatever it is, week 8, week 9 in college football. Another great slate. I thought that this past weekend was remarkable with Georgia coming back in the final 10 minutes against Ole Miss to win that game 43-35, even though it screwed up my point spread pick by a half a point. And again, a lot of great results out there. And we've got another big weekend coming up again, as we will preview throughout the week. 10 p.m. Eastern time is our typical time. We came on early tonight to accommodate David because I wanted to get the Florida coaching angle from the very best. David Waters with Gators Breakdown. VOCFB.com. We will display it here in just a second to get your VOCFB merch. So combine your two favorite brands, your favorite team, and the voice of college football, and get your merch at VOCFB.com. Keep in mind, my picks are available. They're here as a premium member on the main channel, but you can also get them per post, per week. You don't have to sign up for the entire month on Patreon. MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Look up either one of those. You should be able to find the link on Patreon to get my picks. I'm not going to brag them up this week. 10-10 against the spread, 14-6 against the money line. So that's pretty strong, considering that the money lines were all even. I wasn't picking the easy blowout games. Those were all the difficult games that were close to an even point spread. 14-6 money line for me. The 10-10 as Auburn did not come through for me. I was hoping for that 55% day, 11-9, but Auburn blew it late. So we did not get that done. And I lost 3 games by a half a point. USC, 9.5 against Notre Dame. They lose by 10. Arkansas, that was another one. And then the one that I just mentioned as well. The call-in link is in the chat. And I wanted to serve this one up as well. I was on a text chain with our buddies Chris and also Jackson Johnson. And the Auburn Tigers were brought up. The unluckiest team in college football, I got to say, this year. And Hugh Freeze, we mentioned the Auburn job. Hugh Freeze may be let go. I think he needs to win. I got to think both games against Kentucky and Arkansas coming up. He's 0-4 in the SEC. He's lost every one by one score. 3 of them heartbreakers. The Texas A&M game, they were largely dominated in that game, but just stuck around and kept it close at 16-10. But otherwise, Auburn, we know that the refs blew the game against Oklahoma. I'm not going to be the type that says, well, they definitely would have won the game. We just have no absolute idea, but that's about as much as you can get ripped off in a game as they did against Oklahoma. This past weekend, again, they blew the game against Missouri, but certainly not helped by a pass interference call that would have most likely won the game. And then the Georgia game, they score a touchdown to make it 17-0. Auburn is clearly, Jackson Arnold clearly in the end zone to make it 17-0 right before halftime. That gets taken off the board. They lose 20-10. Again, should be able to hold a 10-0 lead, but still they get ripped off a touchdown. Who knows what would have happened? Just making the point that this has to be the unluckiest team in all of college football, Auburn. So it was dropped in our chat that, what would Auburn do, for as bad as they look record-wise at 0-4, 3-4 overall, what would Auburn do in the ACC? If Auburn was in the ACC against an ACC schedule, are there any teams in the ACC that are better than Auburn? For sure, other than probably Miami. Miami's better than Auburn. I believe so. Other than Miami. So it got me to think, take the Big Ten and the SEC. Take those two conferences and put them up against the ACC and the Big 12. I'm asking the chat right now. All right, folks. Take the SEC. Let's start with the SEC. How many teams in the SEC do you believe would win the Big 12? And how many teams in the SEC do you believe would win the ACC? And I'm guessing that the list will be shorter versus the ACC just because of the presence of Miami. Despite losing this game against Louisville on Friday night, they're still a top 10 team in the nation. I still have them in my top 10 at number 9. And they're a 5-1 football team. They played a remarkable season up until Carson Beck's 4 interceptions and him being a little shell-shocked and a little gun-shy, I think, on the last 2. So how many teams in the SEC would win the Big 12? And how many SEC teams would win the ACC this year? What is Auburn doing in the Big Ten? I don't know what that means. Household operator would take Georgia Tech over Auburn. Jim R would take Auburn versus the ACC. So Georgia Tech versus Auburn. If they play tomorrow, I have no idea who would win that game. I do know that Vegas would make Auburn the favorite. Not substantially. I bet that they would be a 4, 5, 6 point favorite at home and maybe a 1 or 2 point favorite on the road. That would be my guess on the Vegas line of Auburn and Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech barely, scraped by Wake Forest. They controlled the game against Colorado, but they were only up by 1 score and had to score a touchdown. Haynes King, like a 50-yard scamper with a minute left to play to win that game. And they barely beat Virginia Tech, who's a bad football team. But at least they're winning the games, obviously. And Auburn has not proven to be able to pull out close games. What was their one big non-conference game? Oh, they went to Baylor and won that game by 2 touchdowns. I would take Auburn, but I'm not saying that they would win for sure. I'm not like pounding my fist on the table to say there's no question Auburn's better than Georgia Tech. They would win. Toss up. toss up. Kevin says Auburn looking like Nebraska with Scott Frost. Ironic that Auburn's coach's name is Hugh Freeze. Good one, Kevin. We got to say Nebraska. Yes, I would ease up on the Scott Frost not ever leaving. Really, Nebraska and Matt Rule's team's looking pretty similar. Yes, it's been better. But if you caught my rant on Friday night, and I will leave the link because I see somebody jumping in here letting people know where the link is, and I did a bad job again tonight. Didn't put the link in the description section of the video. My apologies, but it's in the chat, and I've got it online on X. Follow me on X. Also, the Voice of College Football on X. We'll get it back in the chat for all of you. That I had just kind of had enough with Nebraska and with Miami, and just hearing over and over and over that these teams are back. Now, do I think that there's much of a comparison between Miami and Nebraska? I do not. I believe Miami is one of the 10 best football teams in America. I thought until Saturday that they were playing the best football in America. They had played, let's put it more accurately, they had played the best against the best schedule. If you combine schedule and performance, Miami was the best team in America in terms of a resume, not the best team in America, but then came Louisville. But Nebraska, again, if you want to hear me just rail on these two teams, their programs, and partially their fan bases, nobody get offended if you're not delusional. But if you are delusional, I was talking to you for the first 10 minutes of Friday's show because Nebraska takes it on the chin. I heard it all week about, Nebraska, they're contending for the playoff. Nebraska has not beaten a good football team in like 7 or 8 years. Like one. Just beat one decent team. One, some of you wouldn't even call them a decent team. Minnesota lined up on Friday night, and you lost by 18 points. It's pathetic. It's gotten to the pathetic. I don't care what their record is. It's 5-2. They beat Abilene Christian or Houston Christian or one of those Christian schools, and they beat Akron. Great. They beat Cincinnati. That's become a great win. I don't think they'd want to play Cincinnati again. Nebraska's not a good football team. Let's face it. They're not good. Nebraska is Rutgers. Nebraska, Rutgers. I'm going to start to interlace them and exchange their names, interchange them randomly. Rutgers, Nebraska. They're the same program. I'm not talking about how many people are in the stands or how many people watch on TV. I'm talking about on the field. These are the same teams. Nebraska, Rutgers. I'm going to like print t-shirts. Nebraska equals Rutgers. That's a good one. That's one right there. We'll see what David Greenshield thinks about that.
Yeah. I wasn't big into Nebraska coming into I was between like 7-5 and 8-4 on Nebraska coming into this year. I think that's where you were at. If I wasn't,
because they got a schedule that says 8-4. I don't think that they're an 8-4 football team, but
yeah, I mean, I thought that, and I like Matt Rule. I think Matt Rule is a good college football coach. I still do.
Good college football coach. He's not great. He's a good college football. He's one of the 25 best college football coaches in America. Something in that range.
See, I think that's where most there's a term out there called, Mark, that there are levels to this. There are levels to this. And I think some college football fans miss that. There's like the top 1 level, there's the top 2 level, there's the 3rd level, there's the 4th level. See, Matt Rule is not in the top level. He's somewhere in that 2nd or 3rd level, I would say. Is that a fair statement?
Yes. That top level is pretty thin.
Yes.
That top level is rather thin, and then it broadens out from there. And even the 2nd level, I think you would have to make fairly narrow. It would be comprised of, well, we don't have James Franklin anymore, but it would be comprised of longtime guys that have been really good with some hotshot guys like Marcus Freeman that you'd still keep in that second tier until he continues to prove it.
Right,
Not
right.
not Matt Rule though.
Not Matt Rule. Well, okay. You mentioned Miami. Where would you put Mario Cristobal in those levels, Mark? Would he be in level 2, level 3?
I just dropped my head. I don't want to be that harsh. They've had a great season.
Yeah.
It wasn't like they lost to fill in the blank. Who's lost to somebody inexplicably? Well, they didn't lose to UCLA.
Yeah.
Although, shoot, UCLA's tied for second place in the Big Ten. But anyway, they didn't lose to UCLA on Thursday or Friday. They lost to a good football team. But
yeah, Louisville's a solid
Mario
football team.
Cristobal
That's a good 9.
You'd have to put him on and I'm sorry, David, I'm tripping on you because I think we've got a long delay here. So Mario Cristobal, you would have to put at least on the Matt Rule level because the guy's won the Rose Bowl. He's won a Pac-12 championship game. His team just went 10-3 last year, and they're on their way to go at least 10-3 this year. Yeah,
I would tend to agree. I would say this though, that loss probably said more about Carson Beck though, didn't it, than Mario Cristobal?
Yes.
By the way, I mean, because to be honest with you, Mark, I was starting to drink the Miami Kool-Aid, and I've said that Miami football was RIP since January of 2003. So were you. I know you have. Well, you no longer have 85 different Miami football shows to cater to. But in any case, I was buying that they were good in the trenches. Bain was, one of the best defensive linemen in the country. They were legit on O-line, solid at wide receiver. We were going to see the resurgence of Carson Beck at quarterback. And boom, this was going to be a team that could challenge for a national championship and make a run in the playoff, I mean, I just had a feeling they were going to stub their toe. And Louisville was the type of team that could do it. Jeff Brom, hey, I'm an Ohio State fan. When he was at Purdue, he was the one that schemed up that game plan with O'Connell and Rondell Moore and that crew, and took advantage of our kind of a weaker defense we had in 2018. And, put together a good game plan. It made me think of what Matt said when we had the conversation, that Jeff Brom could be one of those guys on people's short list come the off season, Mark. I don't know if you have some thoughts on that as well.
Well, you may have missed the beginning of our show, but we had David Waters on from Gators Breakdown. So, of course, we dove into the coaching candidates pool, and he brought up Jeff Brom for Florida.
Yeah, I like Brom. Yeah.
I do.
Well,
too.
I mean, and the offensive-minded coaches, I wanted to ask you, Mark. I was going to say, I think the two teams that may have gotten some cred over the weekend, as far as real contenders, and you already had this playing for the national championship, are Alabama and Notre Dame. I could see both of those teams in the Final Four at least. What do you think?
Absolutely, I can see them. Ty Simpson's a heck of a thrower from the pocket. He's exceptional. His wide receivers are dangerous. They're starting to mount a ground game. I know you and I had a conversation here a few weeks ago about that being a missing portion of it. And they've been working on that as well. We see a team such as Vanderbilt turn around from their performance at Bama, in which they were clearly the second best team on the field, turn around that. And I know people are down on LSU, but LSU is still loaded with talent, and Vandy won that game. So that's how good Bama is. They're getting better all the time. They just beat Missouri, who's chucking along at 6-1. So I really like Alabama. They've got wins now over Georgia, Missouri, and Vandy.
Yeah.
I
mean, I'm buying them. Imagine this. Imagine if they still had Haynes at running back. By the way, Mark. Imagine
Yeah.
if they still had Haynes at running back. That they'd be even scarier. If they didn't lose Haynes in the off season, that would be a real interesting team. Notre Dame, by the way, I have to say, you know what? We may have overrated Allen, and we overrated a lot about Penn State coming into the season. Allen and Singleton, everybody was talking about the best running back combination in the country. I think we found out who the best running back combination in the country is. It's at Notre Dame with Price and Love.
Yeah, that is the best room in the country. I'm not coming up with another one. I would have told you before the season. I would have leaned Allen and Singleton, admittedly, but I wouldn't have said that was a slam dunk because I don't know that a lot of people noticed how good Jadarian Price was last year. But that is the best room in the country. I'm not coming up with another one. You're right.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I like the way, obviously, Carr is playing as good as any quarterback right now, too. By the way, went a push on that game. I took USC minus the 10. I did not have as good a week as Mark Rogers did this week, by the way.
Well, wait a minute. Just a second
Let's
here,
start
David.
taking your picks, Mark.
Okay. Well, just a second here, David, because maybe I need to go back and amend my record because I lost it on a 9.5 call. I didn't know it stretched out to 10. I could get the push there, and
yeah,
I think I'm going to chuck that loss.
Riley had some debatable play calling in that fourth quarter. I don't understand why he tries to run that tight end pass, by the way, instead of just running his 6'4", 6'5" quarterback on a sneak when he only needs a half a yard and they're down 10 points. What a terrible call, by the way. Yeah. And he's supposed to be this offensive genius, Spingali play caller. And I mean, just run the quarterback sneak.
Well, that's the problem, David. He is that. And sometimes those guys just overthink it and they don't do the obvious. You got plenty of other opportunities to show how smart you are. Sometimes you just need to do the obvious thing.
That's true. By the way, Mark, I dare say, is there any quarterback throwing the football with any kind of accuracy better than Julian Sain right now? I mean, I know it's Wisconsin. Everybody's going to say it. But just watching him spin it, man, I'm telling you, the accuracy is pinpoint, my friend. Pinpoint.
Yeah. Those Buckeyes may have to be reckoned with in the postseason again.
Hey, you know what? We just need a little bit of run game. A little bit of run game. That's my only thought process. I think it's been a little bit more on the offensive line than it has been the running backs. Although it's tough to replace Judkins and Henderson. Let's just be fair. They probably, I think, were the best running back duo last year in the country. But that was going to be tough to replace. I just think our run blocking can be a little bit better. But listen, the bottom line is if you have the best defense in the country, a great passing game, you only need a decent running game to go along with that to win the national championship, in my opinion. I mean, would that be a fair, overall assessment if you were to put all three of those components together, especially this year when there's parity out there in college football?
Yeah, and so I would rather, in fact, have the elite passing attack with just a capable running game than the opposite. I just think because there's explosive plays and because I think that's more of a separator than it is to have an elite running game and just a marginal passing attack. Just now, granted, we're not talking about a bad running game with an elite passing attack. You got to be able to run it, and especially in short yardage situations.
Yeah. I mean, if they can run for a little bit over 100 yards a game, be good in short yardage, be good in goal line, occasionally, run the ball to keep the defense honest. But, I mean, obviously, the passing game is going to do the heavy lifting here. With the way Sain is spinning it, our wide receivers, and plus, as long as we're scoring in the upper 20s right now with this defense, I mean, in the way they're playing, I mean, it's almost historic right now how good this defense is. And it's scary. They lost an entire defensive line, and it's the best defense in the country.
They've given up 4 touchdowns this year. and they're still hanging around 5 points a game given up, or whatever
Yeah.
it is. I don't know. Maybe it's a little bit more than that since Illinois scored 16. But regardless, yes, absolutely.
Mhm.
All right, David.
All right, my friend.
Mhm.
Always good to see you. A little bit early tonight, by the way. Huh?
Yes, that was to accommodate our guest.
Okay. Back to the 10 o'clock hours the rest of the week.
Absolutely.
Well, we'll get back together soon, my friend. You take care of yourself.
Thank you, David. Appreciate it, man.
Yep. Bye-bye.
David Greenshield stopping by. Let's keep it rolling. We got Will N.D. Notre Dame talk. Feeling good. Irish defeat those Trojans 34-24. What you got for us, Will?
All right. It does the wrong mic so much when I get into StreamYard. Okay, now I'm good. Right?
You're
Am I
good?
Okay. Yeah, I just got back from South Bend. Almost missed my flight from O'Hare. That was scary, but we got in. We got in the plane and got back. But yeah, it was a lot of fun being back for that game.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
So what's your takeaway?
Well, I was watching the Florida part, of course. I tuned in and watched all that. I just don't understand why Marcus, if Marcus is recruiting as well as he is at Notre Dame, number 3 class in the country right now, the playoff run helped with recruiting. Like, why would he want to leave and go to Florida? Like, do you think?
I wouldn't.
Okay.
I wouldn't leave Notre Dame for Florida, and it's nothing against Florida. It's a great football program and has been in the past, but I think that the SEC is so deep with Florida, Texas A&M, and we could just keep the LSUs of the world that you have to be really, really good to distinguish yourself. And the odds of anybody year after year, let's say if you won a 10-year run at Florida to distinguish yourself consistently, that's going to have to be a much better program than it is right now. And I don't know that anyone in that league over the long haul is going to distinguish themselves going forward, especially after Kirby Smart calls them quits, that there's just too much money, resources in that league, and it's too deep for there to be a Alabama, Georgia stranglehold on the conference for 5 or 10 years like there was, or a great coach like Nick Saban, obviously. So not when you can be at Notre Dame and distinguish yourself. And I just think that there are more benefits to it.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I believe the Irish can make top 4, but we just need to get rid of these awful CJ car interceptions. Like, that can't happen. Like, he can't throw the one like he did against SC. But we miss Xavier Watts big time in the secondary, and feel like that's a bit of a hole there. But I definitely feel like top 4 is possible, but we got to keep the program rolling. I feel like you got to at least win that first round game, whether it's on the road or South Bend, whoever it is, have to at least win that game to keep the momentum for the program going.
So wait a minute, Will. You can't have a good season in 2026 because you lost a playoff game in 2025?
No, I said not that, but I feel like it would be really disappointing to not even win a playoff game this season.
Well, sure. There's a difference between it's being disappointing and it derailing the program.
Not derailing, but I don't know, hurting the image, I guess.
Didn't Georgia lose its first playoff game last year?
Well, they had a bye. It was different.
Arizona State and who else? And Tennessee and all sorts of teams are going to lose playoff games.
I know, but I feel like
I don't think that the two are that connected, but sure.
And Mark, so do you think there's a gap between Ohio State and everyone else, or do you think Indiana? I mean, I feel like Indiana's pretty close-ish to Ohio State, but not as not.
I think that if Ohio State was more explosive on offense, and we'll see if they show that capability. You got to think that they have it in them, but they have chosen not to. So some of that might be a choice that Ryan Day, well, we know that Ryan Day made that choice early in the season to protect his quarterback from a play calling standpoint. Now we'll see. They have, starting with the Minnesota game, he started to take the reins off of Sayan and let him chuck it deep, and he really threw some rainbows against Wisconsin. So if they're explosive, they still don't have the run game that is nearly as good as Notre Dame's run game, obviously, and then some other teams. So no, they are not head and shoulders above everyone else. Not at all.
And if you were Penn State, who do you think would be your number one candidate right now? If you
My
were
number one candidate, I should have a good answer for you, shouldn't I? He's been fired for 10 days now. My number one candidate. If I could have any coach, wow, I should have any. Who would be the best coach out there? Like I'm going past some guys, but I think there's got to be somebody better. There's got to be somebody better. I do like Eli Drinkwitz. I do like Matt Campbell. And then there's other guys, Ryan Day, Dan Lanning, Kirby Smart, etc., that aren't going to leave. I don't know that there's anybody retired that I think is reasonable. And I know Urban Meyer gets brought up, and our buddy Marty Leap brings up Urban Meyer, and others do. And sure, you make that phone call and you consider that, because if he's at the top of his game, then you suddenly have the best coach in college football. But I don't know that it's that. He's been away from the game for 7 years. I don't know if it's that much of a slam dunk that he's just going to walk into Penn State and elevate them. And who knows if he's even interested. Brent Key, unless I'm missing somebody, I like Drinkwitz and I like Campbell.
I
don't like
too.
Matt Rule. Not that I don't like Matt Rule, but what is Matt Rule?
He's not an upgrade.
You're gonna fire James Franklin and pay off $50 million to get Matt Rule. Matt Rule is James Franklin without all the accomplishments, without all the wins. Yeah. So unless am I missing anybody?
Would you consider going like hot shot and going Fran Brown? I mean, even though they're bad this year, that's because
Fran Brown's a hot shot.
I mean, good younger guy, good recruiter. That's why I called him a hot shot.
Hot shot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fran Brown has done nothing for me to get excited about. I can't get it out of my head that Fran Brown let his team lose against Stanford and just stood there for 3.5 minutes and watched the time drip off the clock while he was holding 3 timeouts in his back pocket. That is arguably the worst time management I've ever seen in my life. It was unbelievable. I kept checking the screen going, he's got 3 timeouts. Okay. Just making sure. And like the end of it was inexplicable, like 40 seconds, 35, and he's standing there and Stanford's in field goal range. And it's like, they're just taking this down to kick the ball. You're not going to give Kyle McCord the ball with a minute left. What are you doing? Like, and I don't want to damn the rest of his coaching career because of one night, but it was just very odd. And like you say, they're not having a good year this year.
Do you think Lane will go to Florida, or do you think he'll stay?
I think that before Lane Kiffin made Ole Miss what Ole Miss currently is, then there's no comparison between the two jobs. But now, I don't know if you heard the conversation with David Waters, but he is pretty much leaning on Florida being a better job because of recruiting.
Yeah.
And less reliance on the transfer portal. But I guess I think that becomes less and less as these players become more mobile, and NIL is going to get a lot of players to come out of their state, out of their region, if they can make more money. And I would guess that Florida's got more resources when it comes to it's just a bigger school, but I don't know how much more. So I guess it's still a better job, potentially, but it's not a better job now, but that's partially due to Lane Kiffin. And it's partially due to Florida making bad decisions on who they're going to hire.
And the last question, do you think Clark Lee and Vanderbilt, do you think they can sustain this, like be competitive in the SEC? Or do you think just like the triple option on steroids won't be able to work? Will get figured out and they won't be able to do it again once Pavio leaves?
Well, I was thinking of that question in light of what I just mentioned between the Florida and Ole Miss jobs, more from that standpoint than just looking at an offense of whether Vanderbilt is all in on football or whether they got a really good head coach. He got himself a quarterback. He came up with a scheme that's a little tricky for teams to defend. And he did a really good assessment of guys in the transfer portal, and he just kind of put it together really well for this 2-season stretch, or that this is sustainable and he really has built a program. I can't answer that question, but I got to think that the odds are that it's not sustainable. The odds are that he can't fight that schedule every year with the disadvantage that he has. So I'm going to say it's not sustainable.
Not sustainable. Okay. All right. Well, great talking to you, Mark. The 10 o'clock's tough. Like I want to call in, but the 10 o'clock's tough. So I'm happy that I at least got to talk to you today.
You get some early mornings.
Oh yeah. I mean, I understand. I mean, you don't have to do it for me. I mean, I'm sure more of your audience is.
Yeah, there were a few different reasons for that, but here we are.
Yeah. All right.
Well, thanks, Will. Good to see you.
Thanks, Mark.
Will ND, proud Notre Damer, and the Irish, of course, get a big win. And so now that we got to Real MVP showing up, I know that he would enjoy this question. So I threw this out after our conversation with David Waters, because there was a comparison in a conversation I was in this afternoon. There was a comparison made between Auburn and Georgia Tech. Not talking about all time, which of course Auburn's a much better program in recent college football history, but comparing Auburn and Georgia Tech in 2025. Well, that's a ridiculous comparison, right, Mark? Georgia Tech's 7-0, Auburn's 3-4. Or is it? How many teams in the SEC would win the ACC? Or if you believe that Miami is still that good, despite what we saw on Friday night, let's say you're in the camp that was just a blip. Miami's still that good. They're like a top 4 or 5 team in the country. And I have no issue with anyone believing that. I don't think we saw enough on Friday night. It's not like they lost 45-0 or that Louisville's some horrendous team. They're UCLA showing up on Friday night. So my opinion on Miami hasn't completely changed. But if you do believe that Miami's strictly that good, that an Auburn or a Missouri or a Tennessee could not leave the SEC and win the ACC because Miami's that good, well, just take it to the next level. Lower. Could those teams go to the ACC and get to the championship game? Would they be the second best team in the league? I would love to see Auburn go through an ACC schedule. Give Auburn Miami's schedule. I would love to see them play that schedule. How many teams in the SEC would win the ACC? And again, if you truly believe in Miami, and the only reason you're going to say the ACC would not allow one of those teams from the SEC to win the conference because of Miami, then who would at least get to the conference championship game? And then also you could do the same deal with the Big 12. Tukey G says 6 or 7 SEC teams would win the ACC and 10 win the Big 12. So the first statement I agree with, except the possibility that they lose to Miami, because I still think that Miami's the best team in the conference. So either 6 or 7 of those teams in the SEC just flat out win the ACC, or they get to a conference championship game and they lose to Miami. Edwards says that Georgia Tech has fight, so he likes their chances. And this is a common answer right here, small time Republic. I totally get it, that he basically says, I don't care how good Auburn is, how talented the roster is, that there are more NFL players on the Auburn roster than the Georgia Tech roster. They would muck it up because of Hugh Freeze. Hugh Freeze would muck it up. Who are those coaches that muck things up? Hugh Freeze, Mario Cristobal, Scott Frost. I'm actually going to mention a guy that has a national championship and 2 national championship game appearances, Les Miles. At the NFL level, I can't really point to a collegiate game that this happened, but at the NFL level, Herm Edwards. Minnesota Dave says 5, maybe 2 win the Big 12. E. Gibson says the ACC is better than the Big 12, but I don't think so. Not saying the Big 12 is good, though. Okay, I think he's responding to somebody else saying that the Big 12 is better than the ACC or something like that. Anyway, Bama lost to FSU, but might have a shot. Bama might have a shot to win the ACC. If we put Bama in the ACC, they would win the ACC, first of all. Secondly, yes, they did lose to Florida State. That's not been smitten from the record by any stretch, but we understand that you could lose a game in the conference and still win the conference championship. Bama did lose that game on the road against Florida State. I don't know if there's a result in college football. Here's another question. I don't know that there's a result in college football this year that more people would determine would be different if the 2 teams played today than Alabama and Florida State. I believe that is the game. Look at UCLA and Penn State. Like when that game was over, I'm sure if I asked that question, if they played again, tons of people would say, you know what? Yeah, Penn State wouldn't let that happen again. Well, since then, Penn State has lost to Northwestern and Iowa, and UCLA has won 2 more games. Give it up for UCLA. UCLA deserve. Okay, they've got a prominent spot. I was just checking. UCLA, we're going to keep them on the top shelf. Some people consider the middle shelf to be the shelf, but we could also consider the top shelf for obvious reasons. It is the top shelf for UCLA. You know what? We're going to put UCLA up there by themselves, except for those schools back in the back, Oregon State and Wisconsin. Boy, it's quite the acclaimed top shelf there. We got Wisconsin and Oregon State. And Washington State. That's the top shelf. Washington State, Oregon State, and Wisconsin. But UCLA's in front. Give it up for UCLA. They whip Penn State. They come out east and dispose of, yes, a bad Michigan State team. I get it. But by 25 points. And then I watched the highlights, like the extended 15-minute package. That was one set of highlights I wanted to see. UCLA and Maryland. I'm watching those highlights. There are 3.5 minutes left in the game, and UCLA has 7 points. And I'm thinking, how did they win this game 20-17? They got 7 points with 3.5 minutes left. They did it. They did it. Crazy game. They did it. They kicked a field goal at the gun. UCLA is 3-1 in the Big Ten. Yes. Indiana's undefeated. Ohio State's undefeated. But then you list all these one-loss teams. UCLA's 3-1 in the Big Ten. I love it. I am rooting for UCLA this year. I'm rooting for Virginia in the ACC. Here's another good topic. And I guess this is going to be our topic for the. You know what? We're going to save this topic. I'm going to write it down. We're going to save it for Tuesday night. It's only mid-October, so obviously there are still crazy conference championship situations out there. They've only played 3 to 4 games out of 8 or 9. So basically, except for the 0-4 and 0-3 teams and 1-3 teams, everybody else is still in play. However, there are championship paths, championship scenarios in the ACC. Miami lost to Louisville on Friday and has one loss in the ACC. Georgia Tech still undefeated in the ACC. Virginia is undefeated in the ACC. SMU is undefeated in the ACC. All three of those teams, but of course, are one game ahead of Miami. Louisville has a loss in the ACC, but of course, they have a one-game lead, de facto one-game lead against Miami in the ACC because they won the head-to-head. Miami better beat SMU and then hope, because Georgia Tech does not play Virginia. They can both go undefeated in the conference. SMU plays Miami. And SMU plays, maybe they play Georgia Tech. I don't know. They do not play Virginia. Virginia, I started to hit on this early in the season. Virginia's got a nice little setup in the ACC. Now, let's understand that Virginia, they could lose at any time to anyone. They have not proven to be some juggernaut, but they are 6-1 and they are 3-0 in the ACC. Florida State, Stanford, Louisville. Oh, they win another one? Virginia was off this past weekend, right? No, they beat Washington State outside the conference. They're 3-0 in the conference, I believe. Miami could go 11-1 and miss the ACC championship game. Yes, the ACC has a chance to be wacky at the end. And we know that the Big 12 has a shot to be wacky. And even the SEC in a different way. In the ACC and the Big 12, it's more like all of a sudden it could be one of these situations where with about 3 weeks left, suddenly Houston's going to be on the map, or Virginia is to a certain extent because they're in the top 25 from what I understand. They're in my top 25 for sure. But Houston, Cincinnati, there's going to be some odd teams possibly vying for conference championship games and eventually the playoff. While the SEC, we're used to talking about Tennessee and Texas A&M and LSU, and we're used to talking about those teams and seeing them with attention on them late in the season. So that's not going to be, but it's going to be, it appears as though it's going to be crazy in terms of a logjam again in the SEC like it was last year with, I think, 8 teams went 5-3 in the SEC last year. And then in the Big Ten, unless somebody gets tripped up, that's most likely going to be Ohio State against Michigan. It's Indiana. It's Ohio State. That's your championship game. So the other 3 should be mighty interesting. Kevin says, after all these years, Miami's never even made it to the ACC championship game. Check that. 2017. Clemson 35, Miami 3, ACC championship game. So Miami has played in the ACC championship game. DeReal says almost every SEC team this decade has been more successful than Florida. Florida had its last successful season in 2020 when they reached the SEC championship game. And yes, it's been all downhill basically, unless you want to get excited about 8-5 last year. E. Gibson brings up an interesting point that I noted during my top 25 that actually makes sense. There are 8 teams in the Big Ten that are 5-2. 8 teams. That's crazy. 8 teams, half the league, -1. Half the league is 5-2, including Northwestern. And Northwestern, like UCLA, I got excited about UCLA. I don't have a Northwestern helmet. Nobody's gotten me one. But nobody's. I also have to note that Northwestern, with a win against UCLA, we're going to look back at the end of the season and say, man, that Northwestern win in week 1 of the Big Ten schedule against UCLA, that was huge. And nobody watched it except Mark Rogers watched the extended highlights package of it. I do recall that. And it looked like a couple high school teams out there, especially in that stadium. Northwestern is 3-1 in the Big Ten. Love it. Yeah, it is incredible that Miami has never won the ACC. If you would have stated that to any college football fan in 2004, I believe was the year that Miami entered the ACC, having just fielded some of the best teams in college football history, 2001, 02, 03, those were exceptional teams, that Miami would not win the ACC. But Louisville would win the ACC and Georgia Tech would win the ACC. And I don't think Boston College has. They have lost ACC championship games. They have not won any. Virginia Tech, of course, has. I don't think there's any other ludicrous teams that have won the ACC. Now, Duke has gotten to the championship game. Virginia's gotten to the championship game, but it's obviously been a lot of Clemson, Florida State. Pitt won the ACC in 2021. All right, folks, we do appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football, and that is our show for tonight. And we'll be back on Tuesday. So Tuesday, we got a big day with the Iowa show at 5, the Big Ten show at 6, and the College Football Late Night show at 10. That's Eastern time. See you then.